drink your drink before I start. I don't want slurping going on like that. We had a break last week, but we're now back to casting off our podcast series.
Mm-hmm.
And what are we talking about today?
Well, we're going to be discussing the highs and the lows.
Yes.
Of course, a lot of people probably think there are no lows because it's all highs, isn't it?
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a second. So we're talking specifically about the highs and lows of this cruising life, the lifestyle that we lead here.
And this came about because of episode 304, I think it was, where we found paradise.
Yes.
Darawan Island.
That was 303.
303.
Yep.
304 also has some relevant content to this subject, but yeah, we found Darawan Island, which was beautiful, and we went to go ashore. The outboard cut out, and we were quite a long way out from the island.
Yes.
And so we had to row back, and we had to tend to that. There was an issue with the sail. Anyway, there was a couple of things, wasn't there?
Yes, and it made you think, because you've been doing a little bit of repairing on this whole journey between Sabah and Indonesia, haven't you, all the way? In fact, it's not just that episode.
But it's all the time.
Yeah, and it made you think about this high and low thing that we live through constantly on the boat. So that's why this episode is about the highs and lows of cruising. Hello, I'm Liz.
And I'm Jamie.
Welcome to Follow the Boat, in which we discuss what it's really like to give it all up to live on a boat.
And go travelling around the world. We've been doing it since 2006 and we're still at it.
Each week we talk about our latest YouTube videos.
And about boats, sailing, travel or anything else which floats into our heads.
And if you leave a comment we like, we'll give you an answer and a name check. Peace and fair winds. So the episode that's just gone out, 304, has us in Maratua Atoll. And one would have thought that would have so beautiful and so perfect and wonderful, that place, that there would be no low. But there was one low, wasn't there, in that particular episode? Do you remember?
How can I not remember that? You know, I'd been sizing this atoll up for ages.
Yeah.
And I'd written it off because I was only ever looking at the chart data and even the satellite data, which suggested that there was this little channel, but you could only get in so far and it was pointless going in because it didn't allow you to get anywhere else on the atoll. Well, it turns out that you can actually go through that channel.
Yes.
But you've got to get your bloody timing right.
Which we didn't, did we? Well, we thought we did.
Well, I think the jury's out on that.
I know.
Because I kind of knew it was going to be a bit tough, and we knew that the tide was wrong, but I just don't think we expected it to be so strong.
No, I think there's a number of things at play here. We were with other boats, so we weren't just making decisions between the two of us. We had other people in there throwing in different pieces of advice and ideas, and you and I tend to sort of go along with the crowd usually. We don't really dig our heels in unless we feel very strongly. And as you say, we didn't know that it was going to be as bad as it was, but we did know there'd be a current in and out. And the worry was that if we went in, it would be so fast it could be potentially dangerous. And the thought was, well, if we're going against the current on the way in, we won't get sucked in, and we can kind of, make it easier on ourselves. So though we'd be pushing uphill in some ways, it would be easier to control the boat.
Yes. Also, there was a current all the way along that journey. So we were going from west to east, and there was a strong current coming from the north.
Yeah.
And so you naturally assume that, especially if you look at this, I called it a horseshoe shape, but it's actually more like a jellyfish shaped atoll.
Yeah.
And it has an open bottom, so there's only land around the top and the sides.
But it's very shallow, open bottom, so we couldn't go through there. Yeah?
Correct. But the point is that you'd think, well, surely this northerly current coming from the north, would affect the whole atoll. But it seemed as if what was happening was water was coming into the atoll and then it was only exiting through that channel. That's certainly how it felt. But
like a plug hole. It was just all going out one way.
Yeah, but it was counterintuitive.
Yes.
It didn't make sense that it would be coming that way. But, anyway, that was a bit of a low.
Yeah, well, yes, it's a low. It was a high as far as adrenaline goes, but a low as in anxiety. It was pretty anxiety making.
It was one of the toughest bits of helming I think I've ever done.
Yeah, we've we have seen currents like that before. Do you remember when we were going from Belitung up to Singapore, and we went into one place which was similar in some ways, and halfway through you said, no, don't like this, let's get out of here.
Yes. Yeah, unfortunately, although we mentioned the overfalls, we didn't actually get any video footage of the overfalls because they were quite vicious. I mean, okay, they're only sort of half-metre breaking waves, but when you're in the middle of it and the boat is literally doing this and you've got hardly any control over the boat. Plus, as I say in the video, we've got boats in front and boats behind. And of course, the boats in front are being slowed down and you haven't got to where they are. So you're wondering, why are they slowed down? And you don't realise, of course, that it's not them on the throttle of the engine. So there were the overfalls, there was the lack of manoeuvrability, plus...
Because it was so narrow, there's no way we could turn around.
No.
Once we were in, we were...
That's it, you were committed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Lesson learned, though.
Yeah, and to be honest, I mean, I wouldn't say that was a low. As you say, it was exhilarating, but it was tough. It was tough.
Yeah.
And the high, of course, was Maratua.
Oh, yes. Oh, my word. What a place.
Which is all captured in the episode that's just gone out, and also, hopefully, depending on when this podcast goes out, hopefully the next episode, 305.
Yes, it will be out on Sunday. It's all ready to go. So I just need to schedule that because in case people are not aware, and they probably aren't, we are now making our way to Lombok, 1,000 miles of sailing to do, and it does mean island hopping, and it does mean day sails and sometimes some overnighters, and we're not sure what kind of connection we're going to get, so we're going to be offline probably on and off over the next 6 weeks or so.
Yep.
So we've scheduled what we can, and we'll upload when we can.
When we can.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right, so onwards, highs and lows. Lots to say about this, but first of all, I just want to reiterate what Shamus said. You read this out in the little thing last week, which was the happiness and highs of boat ownership and cruising do outweigh the unpleasant lows, but do the highs happen often enough to offset what feels like the many more lows? And do they make up for being away from friends, family, and all life on land has to offer? That was a good, philosophical question to talk about. I just wanted to add, Kate Day on Facebook wrote, I would imagine that the balance shifts after a while. Perhaps you get more blasé about the highs. I mean, how many sunsets at anchor can you marvel at? And the lows probably get more and more irritating. I don't know, I'm a landlubber. She's got quite an interesting perspective on that, I think.
Very interesting. I don't know how much I agree or disagree with Kate, because we can never, ever tire of a sunset.
I know, it's funny, isn't it? You would have thought you would.
Or a dolphin.
No.
Yeah. I think that it is those simple highs that we enjoy, that keep us going. I don't know if we get blasé about those highs.
We don't. I thought she had a point about sunsets, because when you look at sunset photographs, they get a bit boring. Don't they?
Boring.
They're the old hackneyed thing, oh yes, stick a sunset up.
Yeah.
Every time I put a sunset up on Instagram, people love it though. But you and I get bored with sunsets, looking at them in photos, but we don't get bored looking at them in real life. We were looking at one last night.
And she says, do the lows probably do they get more irritating? And yes, I think there is a good point to that, actually.
Yeah. Because you've seen it so many times before and you just think, oh no, not again.
Yes, especially if it's something that you've repaired and then repaired again and then repaired again, and you feel like you've solved the problem and then it happens again. That can get very irritating, of course.
Oh, absolutely. Do you think that when we look back over all these years of sailing, do you think that we remember the bad times or the good times?
Oh, it's mainly the good, surely.
Yeah.
Otherwise we wouldn't be doing this, would we?
Yeah, the only bad times are the ones a bit like that channel. They're the exhilarating, scary ones at the time, but looking back were quite an adventure. But I think, like, for me, generally in life, I don't really remember the bad stuff unless I make myself do it. But most of the time, it's just a series of great or interesting things that have happened. That's how I remember life. But is that because that's what we choose? That's how we are? Is that our nature, to forget the bad crap and just stick to the good stuff? Do you think there are people out there who just go on about the bad stuff all the time?
Oh, well, there certainly is. But I think also that there is a kind of cumulative effect of some of the bad things that can happen, and we've alluded to this before, and it's having knowledge, the more experience you have, potentially the more cautious you are with sailing, adventuring, because you are much more aware of what can go wrong.
Yes, so that's us now, isn't it?
So yes, so in that respect you could perhaps come across as being a bit more low than high, but I would say on the whole point of doing this is to experience those highs.
And do you think that doing what we're doing attracts people who think like we do, concentrate on the highs, on the positive, on the moment?
No, I don't. No, I don't think so. I think this cruising life attracts all sorts, and you know we've said this before. It's no different to living on land. You do get all different types of cruisers, and some are more positive than others.
Yeah.
Some do dwell on the negatives all the time. Some are irritatingly positive all the time.
Yes.
But I liked Barbara Lepan commented.
Yes, I saw that.
And she said, the highs are so many, like the stars in the sky, I can't count them. The lows are like childbirth. Once over, it's forgotten and ready for another go. And I think that's a really good point, because sometimes you really do get bogged down in the lows, you know, in problem solving, fixing issues. And then when they're sorted and you cruise and you have a perfect day sail and you drop the hook in a beautiful anchorage, you have forgotten about all the things that went past that got you down. It is really like this, isn't it?
It really is. I just want to say a quick hello to Barbara, who we met when we were in Miri, and also Kate, who's an old mate of mine from back home in London.
Right.
So, yes, I agree. You do forget it immediately. And I liked Barbara's comment. I didn't want to read it out because I've not had children myself.
Neither have I, funny enough.
So, but it seems to be a perceived truth that women forget the pain. But I have friends who tell you you never forget that pain and they'd never have another one. So, but yes, it is cumulative and it can weigh you down, but you have to find ways to get over the lows, don't you? Well, there have been a lot of lows over the last couple of years, obviously for us, but for everybody in the world with the situation.
You know, that plays on my mind because, you know, we have both been struggling with the past situation and also the current situation, let's face it, which we've been kind of thrown into. And I think that I'm very careful now on our videos to show much more of the highs than the lows. Me personally at the moment, you know, I've got a few issues. I'm struggling with a few things mentally, compartmentalizing the next 1,000 miles. There's lots of things going on in my mind, which perhaps I'll share with you, but I won't share on camera too much.
Right.
Because I do want to come across, or I want the videos to come across as happy, joyful, great experiences, because I know that many people have had problems coping with the last couple of years, and they turn to YouTube and they turn to our storytelling and many other YouTube channels for escapism, for entertainment, for a bit of positive injection into their life.
Well, I'll give you that, because the situation has been so difficult over the last 2 years, and we know that the amounts of stress and anxiety in all societies has gone right up. So I take your point. I do, however, think it's important to stay as close to the truth as you can, and without going into detail of things that might be difficult, I don't think we should skirt round them too much. And we don't.
It's something we've always said, that, you know, we try and be as honest as possible.
Yeah.
And it is something, sometimes I think when you watch YouTube channels, you can get a wrong impression that everything is happy and joyful all the time. And of course it isn't like that.
Definitely not. Life isn't like that.
No, we do pick and choose what we put in the videos, of course, but you're absolutely right. We do need to show the negative side of it. And of course this has got us into trouble when we did the video,
Yes.
the secret hell of owning a boat, or
5 reasons not to own a boat,
Yes.
not to buy a boat. Yes, or something like that. Yes, I mean,
that was all tongue in cheek.
yes, it was tongue in cheek. Some people didn't understand that, but it was fairly obvious since we were sitting there on our boats that we like having a boat. So although there was a grain of truth, there was a lot of truth in everything we said in our 5 reasons, it was just really a warning to people: don't come in all smiles and rose-tinted specs. It can be difficult. As long as you're aware of that, have a great time. So yeah, that was us being honest. And let's go back to what you said at the beginning about not everybody, but lots of people thinking that we live a life on permanent holiday. I think we need to address that. I think people try to address it, and I think some viewers just refuse to believe us when we say we're not on holiday. I think probably for us particularly, and certainly those people over in the Caribbean, in the South Pacific, in these gorgeous destinations, because of where we are, people imagine that we're on holiday. It's not a 2-week holiday where you pack your bags and just play for 2 weeks. This is a lifestyle. We happen to have chosen to do it somewhere beautiful.
I think that's the key word, lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's lifestyle, not holiday, lifestyle. We just happen to be living our lives, highs and lows, ups and downs, on a boat rather than on land, and that's fundamentally, literally the only difference.
Yeah.
The advantage is that we can move our home around and benefit from everything that has to offer. But yes, you're absolutely right, it is a lifestyle. But people only get to see the edited 15-minute version of what happened to us that week. And I will record the sunsets and the beautiful vistas and what have you, because they are beautiful to look at. I'm less inclined to record myself getting frustrated and swearing because recording myself doing that, and it's not an ego thing, it's just I'm so preoccupied with solving a problem that the last thing on my mind is to pick up that camera and show you how angry and annoyed I am or frustrated with that problem. Yeah,
I mean, if people want a real insight into our lives, we could do 20 minutes of you and me sitting in the cockpit watching videos. You know, we do what other people do. You know, you come home from work and you sit and you watch videos, or you play video games. You might have just supper on your lap. You know, we're no different to that. We just happen to be doing it here. And for us, it's the reason for showing the video every week is that we do at the same time get to see some amazing things and do some great stuff as well. So it's not a holiday. There is a bit of work involved, and it does have its ups and downs. So the first down I want to go on to, and we asked people to let us know their highs and lows. And the low, without any question, that everybody put was repairs and maintenance.
Absolutely.
I think you've got something to say on that.
It's a load of old bollocks. Don't do it. They say owning a boat is boat maintenance in paradise, in exotic locations.
And you always laugh at that. I mean, I always laugh at it, but it's so true. It is true. Can I just read? I mean, we had loads, not hundreds, but we had lots and lots of comments. I just want to read 3 of them out. I think they all got something to say. So, on a whim, currently feeling a little worn down with boat repairs, struggling with a freshwater leak, calorifier issue, and most recently, my sail drive has developed a whine. So that's another 5,000 quid. Still love her though. And then Gavin Halls on his highs. When what you think would be a long, difficult fix turns out to be a very simple, quick fix. Lows. When what you think will be a simple and quick fix turns out to be a long and difficult fix.
Yeah, I love Gavin's comment. That's absolutely spot on. Spot on.
And Daniel Cullinan, who sent us quite a few interesting quotes. A low is when you break something due to your own stupid mistake, and a high is when you fix it better than before using your own resourcefulness and ingenuity. Yep,
completely agree, Daniel. Especially your own stupid mistake. We had an incident recently. Well, we frequently have incidents which, with hindsight after they've been solved, I'm kicking myself at my own stupidity and think to myself, bloody hell, this is boat maintenance 101. I should have known about that problem before it happens, being preventative rather than, curing the problem.
Do you want to mention it now or wait?
Well, I can do, yeah. It was a loose hose clamp, Jubilee clip on a hose, which caused a bit of water ingress into the boat. And thank God I spotted it when I did, because that could have been really bad, and I mean really bad. But it's my own fault, because when I do an engine check, part of the procedure of an engine check is to go around and check all your fittings. Well, I just didn't do it that time, and lo and behold, we had a problem. So it's simple things like that which you know, that is definitely a low. And it's not just the realisation of how dangerous the situation could have been, but it's also the realisation of how stupid you've been to have not have foreseen that problem.
I think you're being very hard on yourself, because the great thing was that you found it, rectified it, sorted it, and we both felt brilliant afterwards. But I
wouldn't say brilliant, I'd say
relieved.
Relieved.
Relieved. But I was pleased for you that you were able to spot it and do something about it, because you've been a bit low recently in the last few weeks when things have gone wrong and you felt that you haven't been able to do it yourself. And I think that's partly because we've had some other body boats around us and you've thought that they know more than you, and I don't think they do. I think they're just better bullshitters. Maybe one person knows more. And also we've had 2 years where we haven't really used ESPA as much as we should have, so you've got out of practice. So I think this run that we've been doing and the rest of the run that we'll do to Lombok is going to be you just getting back to where you were before. When you remember that before it all hit, we went from Thailand all the way through and round Sumatra, right round to Jakarta. Just us, no one else. Any problems you dealt with. And you didn't have the anxiety that you've got now. I think we're still coming down from 2 years of anxiety and very little practice, so we'll get there.
Yes, I hope so. I mean, for me, just on that note, it's my family. It's not seeing my family for 4 years now. And that's a big low for me, because, you know, we live this cruising life and it is our life full time and has been for many years. But that doesn't mean that we write off our family and friends, you know, back in the UK. They're still an important part of our lives. And, you know, because of the whole situation over the last couple of years or so, not being able to go back and see them has definitely been a part of that. So, you know, I think it would be good for me and you to, when we put the boat on the hard, is just step away for a month, because we don't often do that anyway. When we go back to the UK for, you know, once every 18 months or every 2 years, and it would be for a few weeks, and it's always quite a nice break. 3 weeks is long enough back in the UK, and then you're ready to come back refreshed, and that also I think really helps. It allows you to step away from the situation you're in and appreciate all those highs that you've just had. And I'm sure when we get to Lombok and we haul out and we step back and we look at these last 2,000 miles or so that we've done, there've been some bloody good highs, let's face it.
Already there have, and I'm hoping there are going to be a lot more yet.
Yeah.
So the thing about family and friends, that comes up quite a lot with people as a low, as not being able to see them as much as that you'd like. And it is hard. It has been very hard. It's going to be very strange for me. I haven't been back for 4 years. The last time we went back, it was for my dad's funeral. So Mum had died the year before, and I haven't. So I've got no parents left to go and see now, and I'm a bit ambivalent about going back because I know it's going to bring it all back to me. So I'm going to be quite quiet, I should think. But I'm hoping that I might get a chance to go and see my brother in Mallorca, depending on flight availability and all this business. So you haven't seen yours, but you've got yours, which is great, and they're sort of my surrogate. Big brother and sister, I suppose. I think of them as more of like that. Yeah, it's going to be, that is a low, but most of us work around it. It's just this last 2 years that have made life difficult.
And it's been the same for so many people.
Everybody.
You know, everyone's been through this, and that has been a low, irrespective of whether you live on a boat or live on land.
Exactly. So on this problem-solving thing, Hope Rule says, using your problem-solving skills and feeling ingenious is a high for her.
Yes, I rarely feel ingenious, but there are those moments when you solve it and you feel good about yourself.
Oh yes, I did a very simple thing the other day. The vacuum flask that I use every day for a great enormous pot of tea, which I drink throughout the day, it broke. The lid broke. And after 2 days, I had a proper good look at it, and I've put it all back together and it's working again now.
So you took it all apart and put it all back together?
Worked out how it worked. Thought, well, that goes there and that goes there. Let's just see if I can make it work, and it worked. So that was a little ding, happy moment.
And the same in the recent video where I took apart the carburettor, which I'd never done on the Tohatsu before. And fortunately was able to follow a video. But, you know, once you've done it once, oh, this is pretty straightforward.
Yes.
Now I understand how it all fits, so that next time if there's a problem, you're going to be much more inclined to take it apart again.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's definitely a nice little high.
Yes, they're only little highs. It only takes one thing. It's like, I don't know, there's lots of things round here that give me little highs throughout the day, and that's enough to cling on to. So I think repairs generally is regarded by everybody as the low, but I can't say everybody, because some people love maintenance and repairs.
That's very
There are
true.
weird people out there who live for it.
Well, look, come on, let's be fair. Because boat maintenance is such a big part of boat ownership, you have to embrace it. So, do you remember when I first started, if you could compare me trying to fix a problem 15 years ago versus now, I think, even if I say so myself, I do swear a lot less now than I used to. Now it's just much more of a kind of quiet, grumbling,
If you say so.
yeah, I've got to get on and fix this.
Yes.
Whereas previously, just out of pure frustration, there was much more swearing, screaming and shouting.
And it usually ended up with, we need to buy a new one.
Yes, that's the easy solution, isn't it? Just get a new one.
That was your solution in the olden days. We can't afford to do that anymore, so we have to sort things out.
But
So, yes.
it's important to appreciate that this boat maintenance is a big part of our lifestyle, and you have to take it on board. And you've got two ways of dealing with that. You either kick and scream and shout and swear and demand to buy a new one, or you say, right, well, we've got to fix this. And quite often you'll be in places where you don't have the option to go ashore and get some expert help. And that, I think, it does add to that high when eventually you do solve that problem.
Yes, it's and the problem solving is a massive part of cruising.
It definitely is.
Every day in every way, you're solving problems. So if that doesn't float your boat, you're not going to enjoy cruising, because you really will be dealing with problems one after the other. It never finishes as well. There's never an end. There's always the next one. So if you're not happy about that.
And I think that's part of the frustration is that you fix something, you think, oh, thank God for that. That's that job done, over and done with. And then when it breaks again, it's like, but I only just fixed that last week or yesterday or 2 months ago, whenever it was. Why is it breaking again? I thought I did a good repair job on it. But as you say, these things break all the time.
Oh yeah, it's not necessarily the same thing, but for instance the toilet, I deal with a toilet pump, and I know we're coming up for me having to
To
do that.
don't talk about it.
And I'm just hoping we can get all the way to Lombok without me having to take it apart.
Well, it's okay because we do have 2 buckets.
We've got buckets.
So we've got a his and hers bucket.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, isn't it? It's cruisers are pretty good at coming up with sideways solutions to things if necessary, jerry rigging things and whatnot. So yeah, we all agree repairs can be the worst thing. However, go on.
I was just going to say we say this all the time, but so many people did comment, so we do apologise if we don't read your comment out. It doesn't mean that we don't like it, it's just there are lots.
And we have read every single one, and I hope replied to every single one.
Yep.
So other lows.
Go on.
Weather. Andrea V. Petralia. Constantly dealing with weather, lightning, squalls, potential tornadoes. On a boat, you're right out there with a thin veneer of fiberglass between you and the elements. When I lived in my house, I felt more protected during heavy weather. And John Perry gives us a glimpse into his current position. Today's low light is 2 days of 20 to 41 knot squalls, unrelenting, anchored off Town Beach in Geraldton, Western Australia. But there's a highlight. Calm weather is approaching. Weather. Do you see that as a low?
A low front.
Or a high?
Yes.
It's not. It didn't immediately spring to mind for me, but quite a few people have mentioned it.
Yes and no. I think part of it is the weather is outside your control. And I think that's a big part of it. So you do have to, there's an element of taking it on the chin. Obviously, you plan your passages according to the weather. But with boat maintenance, quite often the things that go wrong are preventative and you could have dealt with yourself.
Yeah, so
Not
maintenance
all the time,
rather than repair, yeah.
Yeah. Whereas with weather, it's force majeure, isn't it? So
It is. I think the only thing about weather for me that's a low is when it's doing it all wrong. So you want to get somewhere and there's a bloody great low coming through or something that's totally going to whip up the water and make it impossible for you to get somewhere. It's been okay most of the time because we just either wait for the weather to go or have to change our plans. At the moment we really can't change our plans, they're kind of visa dependent, but we've given ourselves 60 days to get somewhere, so we've given ourselves quite a big, fuck up potential. If it goes wrong, we've got time either side. So yeah, so weather can be absolutely horrendous if it's doing the wrong thing for you at the time.
I think the biggest low with weather for me, as has been discussed recently, is being at anchor in really shit weather.
Yeah.
There's something about being stuck in an anchorage at 3 a.m, just being battered, or the boat being battered, that just makes me very uncomfortable. Perhaps even more so than at sea, although, I don't like to speak out of turn, because shit weather out in the open sea can also be horrible as well. But as you say, weather didn't spring to mind as the big low.
It does. I mean, when it is bad and batters you at anchor like that at night, and then when the sun comes out and it flattens out and you've got a nice wind the next day, then that's a low and a high. So,
well, take this anchorage for example. We are actually, you won't be able to see this, and certainly if you're only listening you won't be able to see this, but I will describe to you this bay. We are anchored in 30 metres. It's the deepest we've anchored in, I think, ever. And we are surrounded by these fishing platforms. And these are all tethered, both down to the ground, underwater, and also to the mangroves.
yes.
And
A bit like med mooring.
a bit, yeah, they're kind of med-moored, so they don't move around much. But yesterday afternoon, we had a sea breeze, basically, and it was making the anchorage a little bit bouncy.
Yeah, so there's a sort of swell coming in, wasn't there?
Yeah, now it wasn't particularly uncomfortable, but what it did mean is that we were bearing down onto the closest platform. And that's when I start to imagine what's going to happen if our keel or our anchor chain wraps around his mooring lines and so on. So though it's not necessarily a low, but it's an aggravation, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think those things sort of happen all the time, so that's why it's not a low for us, because you're kind of always aware of it. As for lightning and tornadoes and stuff like that, as you say, it's not out of your control, there's nothing to do about it. We covered that off when we talked about things you're most scared of. I think that's probably where I'd put that, rather than as a low in this cruising life. So, yep, weather, interesting. The next one. A few people have said bureaucracy. Well, they said it better than I could say it. Bureaucracy. When entering a new country or even within a country. And we've certainly had some of those, particularly recently, haven't we? I'll read them out. I forgive the pronunciation. Tulia Ulyuch, something like that. Bureaucracy without logic when entering and once you're in new countries. Yep.
Yeah, I think that's just part of travelling, is being exposed and open to different ways of doing things, accepting also that when you go to a new country you're abiding by their rules and regulations. They are probably very different to how you do it in your own country, and certainly immigration, harbour master, all that kind of paperwork you do when you check in with your boat can be very different in each country.
And it can take a long time in some places.
It can.
And be sweet as in others.
It can. But it's never occurred to me as being a low. And in fact, I think, again, this goes back to, it's outside your control, and it's also something that you can plan for. So you know in 3 months' time you've got to go back to the immigration office and get a new visa, and so you can plan accordingly.
Yeah.
And so you just manage it, basically.
Yes,
and also, so I was just going to say also, on the whole, the people that we've dealt with in these offices have been nothing but delightful.
Yes, there are exceptions, but on the whole, yes. Certainly here, Indonesia's been fantastic. And mostly in Malaysia.
Yeah.
Malaysia's been really easy.
Yeah.
There were 1 or 2 times in Thailand it got difficult, but mostly it was great. Not going to cover all the countries, but yeah, up and down.
However, of course, you were the one that was dealing with all the paperwork when applying for our Indonesian visa, and you were literally pulling your hair out with the amount of paperwork you had to do.
Oh yes, that was painful. That was a low. Really, that was a low. You don't have to do any of that crap. I've got to stop swearing. However, one thing, it just occurred to me as you were talking about it, is that going in and out of countries helps shape what you're doing. So if you know you've got 3 months somewhere, you think, right, I've got 3 months, where can I go, what can I do? So it does help you come up with your plan, and it shapes your plans for cruising. So maybe not such a bad thing. We all need a bit of shaping in this cruising life, otherwise we'd just be wandering around doing what we like. There was a comment from Tom Moss. I don't know if you want to say anything. He says, having my boat high and dry in a country that won't let me in because I'm not vaccinated.
Well, there's a very simple answer to that.
Oh, I just had
That's
to know.
all. That's all I'm saying on that subject.
I agree.
There's a few other general sort of comments. Can we go on to those?
Yeah, go on. I've got loads.
So, I mean, Daniel Friedman just says, turning off the motor and letting the wind take us away. And he then adds, the low is going back to work. But absolutely, there is nothing better than turning that bloody motor off. And we did it the other day, didn't we? We managed to get a nice little sail in as we came.
Oh, it's always good.
Came into Jinko, the place is called. And yeah, we sailed right into the anchorage.
Yes.
And I haven't done that for ages.
No, that was really great. Let's read out a few of the highs, because let's sort of finish on a high note.
Okay.
So Helene Paises, who we know very well.
Yeah.
Now Helene and her husband's into his 80s, and they are still sailing, for people who are worried about age. She says for her high, becalmed mid-ocean on a star-filled moonless night with stars reflected in the sea. The result was our boat floating in a starlit sphere. In a lifetime of sailing, I've only once experienced it. The sea has to be completely flat.
I'm getting goosebumps as you read that out,
Yes.
because I only read her comment this morning.
Yes.
I have seen this phenomenon once and once only as well. And I remember I was with a guy called Jim in Thailand. We were walking back from a restaurant, walking back to the marina, and we thought we could see luminescent fish in the water.
Yeah.
And we looked closer and we realised it was the reflection of the stars in the water. And as Helene says, the water was absolutely dead flat. And neither of us could get our heads around this idea that you had this sphere of stars that went all the way round and underneath you. It was amazing.
Yes.
The fact that Helene has seen this, out at sea.
On your boat.
Yeah.
All around you.
It's an incredible sight. It really is.
Oh, of course, I'm going to spend the rest of my life wanting to see that now. Wow. Yeah, that is brilliant, Helene. Thanks for that. Sorry for interrupting, but while I've got you here, if you like what we do and you want to support us and become a Patreon, or join us on FTB Mates, or even drop a quid in the rum fund, go to followtheboat.com/pub. Of course, come to the pub. There were quite a few, as I said, from Daniel Callinan. There are two more here. A high is when you find genuine, unexpected kindness and even friendship despite linguistic, cultural and economic differences. Gosh, that's true, isn't it?
Yep. We've discussed that at great length in the last couple of podcasts, and I couldn't agree more.
It's almost one of the best things. He says a low is saying goodbye to your new friends, but a high is unexpectedly crossing paths with old ones.
Yep.
Which we do all the time.
We do. We did it only recently. Bumped into a Yeehaw Jim.
Yeah, hadn't seen him for years.
What a lovely guy, and just there was something quite special, I think, about seeing an old familiar face,
Yes.
and especially an experienced and a fun person like Jim as well.
Yes, a great positive energy.
Yeah, that absolutely.
Another guy well into his 70s doing this on his own.
Vivian Clare says, highlight when your phone signal disappears and you can finally completely immerse yourself in sailing in nature. Low lights when it comes back on again. But that is also a highlight as you are back in touch with family and friends. Now, you're going to see this in a future episode. It will be some months away, I think. But in the last anchorage we were at, we had no internet. Now, normally we embrace this, not having internet, being out on the boat. You switch off, you read, and so on. But of course, we're desperately trying to find weather updates.
Yes.
And, well, you'll see it in the video, but we ended up having to stand under a mast in order to, like this, trying to get a basic weather update. But on the whole, yes, we got used to sailing and losing internet connection and just going with it.
Well, it was fine when we went through the islands off Sumatra because we had prepared ourselves with an Iridium Go, so we were able to get weather every time. But this time we didn't. And we left it too late and we didn't think we'd need to, but hey-ho, that's the way it is. We just have to get on with it, don't we? We're going across the equator, so the weather will be not too dramatic for the next couple of weeks or so. It's only when we start heading further south and we hit the trades that it's going to be a bit more important. I have many more. I liked this from Mark McGovern. We're only 1 year in after selling it all and moving aboard. It's both physically and mentally much, in capital letters, harder than we thought it would be. Yet, at the same time, we love it even more than we thought we would. Isn't that great to hear?
That is good to hear, yes. Yeah, definitely. Keith Turner says, hi, watching your videos for the last 10 years.
Oh, what a nice man.
Yeah, we didn't pay him to say that. He said, lows, wishing I were there with you. Oh. Well, we wish you were here as well, Keith. So thank you very much for that comment.
Well, you're here in spirit. That's the main thing. Yeah. Rosie Landon, I'm not a cruiser, although I really wish I was, but I recently spent the weekend out on the water. The highs even from that short trip were a sense of peace, of being out on the water, that I have never had when on land. I totally agree. I don't think you can get close on land to how you can when you're on the water. It's a meditative state, isn't it?
It is, and it is something that we still to this day don't take for granted. You know, we do appreciate unfurling the sails, turning the engine off, being out there in among the stars or having a good sail with no one else around. And it's a feeling, a sensation that you just can't describe, but we love it every time it happens, even after all these years.
Yes, yeah. So going back to Kate, no, we don't tire of it. These amazing things. William Bremner, who's been a friend of ours for a while.
I saw Bill's comment.
Did you?
Yeah.
Swimming off the stern in the South Pacific, halfway between Tahiti and Tonga, in 9,000 metres of water during a calm break in the trades. I've never felt the sheer enormity of the Pacific like that moment. It was very humbling.
Yeah, and I appreciate Bill's comment because I did the same in the Atlantic, halfway across the Atlantic. We were becalmed and we swam, I think it was only 5,000 metres of water. I know 5,000 is my record, but 9,000 takes some beating. So, but there is something overwhelming about looking down in the water, if you've got your goggles on, and seeing the sunbeams shooting down into seeming infinity beneath you. And exactly as he says, it's that feeling of enormity of the Pacific Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean. Yes. Again, you can't experience that kind of thing on land. It's very rare to get that kind of feeling on land, I think.
Yes, and I've seen and read two feedbacks on that. Some people love that humbling, the fact that you're not the most important thing. You know, you go out of yourself, you're part of this great thing, this world. And other people find it very difficult to come to terms with the fact that they're not important, that they're so small. I think embracing the smallness of the self against the world is a very freeing moment. Do you have anything else to say? I have loads and loads of comments, but we can't read them all, as you've already said.
Yep. No, I just to thank everyone for all the comments. Obviously, they've had 2 weeks to be able to send these comics out because we didn't do a podcast last week. We're going to try our best to get this, try and get it at least uploaded tonight because we're off tomorrow.
Yeah, I know.
So, and we're not sure if we're going to have connection at the other end.
Yeah, so if you don't hear from us, folks, for a while, keep a lookout on marine traffic because you'll see where we are, at least. And we will upload as soon as we can. Want to finish with one quote from Steve Tyner. Mm-hmm. The sea calls to you or it doesn't. Sailing beckons to you. If you don't love it, you'll be miserable. If you do, you won't trade it for anything.
Nothing more to add to that.
No, I think that's the end, isn't it?
Brilliant.
So we've got quite a few things to get on with today, haven't we, before we go tomorrow?
Yeah, the one thing I was thinking was maybe I should get the kayak out and go and kayak ashore because I think there's an ATM because, yeah, I think so. And there is an ATM where we're going.